Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of all of us here, I want to first extend a very warm welcome to the Secretary General. Mr. Secretary General, you've been extremely generous with your time. In this very chamber, 2 days ago, under India's chairmanship of the Counter-Terrorism Committee, we had a special session, and you were very gracious. You inaugurated that session, and you were with us. And of course, that was a very productive session because we introduced the concept of zero tolerance on terrorism into the lexicon, and all this has been possible during your stewardship of the United Nations, so thank you very much. Today we are meeting, in fact, to look at zero tolerance on violence in terms of the United Nations celebration of Non-Violence Day on October the 2nd, which was made possible with the passage of the General Assembly resolution of 15 June 2007, which establishes the commemoration of the International Day in order to disseminate the message of non-violence, including through education and public awareness. That resolution reaffirms the universal relevance of the principle of non-violence and the desire to secure a culture of peace, tolerance, understanding, and non-violence. As you know, Mr. Secretary General, we have been celebrating this day each year in new and innovative ways. 2 years ago, when I came here, the United Nations Postal Service issued a stamp in honor of Mahatma Gandhi. Last year, we had a celebration, and this year, we thought we would do something entirely different, and we are very fortunate to have in one of India's perhaps the leading historian, a person who has distinguished himself academically in many ways, but it is his magnum opus, India After Gandhi, which has earned universal praise. Let me just quote to you what some of the commentators have said. Philip Ziegler, writing in The Spectator, a formidable undertaking, as comprehensive, balanced, and elegantly crafted as any reasonable reader could expect. Edward Luce in the Financial Times, finally, here is a history of democratic India that is every bit as sweeping as the country itself. The Times literary supplement, insightful, spirited, and elegantly crafted. Professor Guha needs no introduction, but today we are very fortunate that apart from this distinguished gathering, Mr. Secretary General, we have his classmates of St. Stephen's College with him here in order to remind him of his of the years prior to his acquiring fame. And these are gentlemen who distinguished themselves in many ways themselves. I don't intend to stand between you and the rest of the program, but I would like to say that in requesting Professor Guha to honor us this day, we were particularly inspired by, the Gandhian message, concept of non-violence, civil disobedience as an instrument of social change. And I have said in the Security Council very often in closed-door sessions that some of what we are witnessing in the Arab Spring in terms of violence to challenge established dispensations, the results might be quite different if the Gandhian approach were to be used. And Gandhi perfected those techniques against colonial structures, which were sometimes quite brutal themselves. But thank you very much, Mr. Secretary General, for joining us, for gracing this occasion. And now I invite you to say a few words. I know you're very busy, but we are very fortunate that you've joined us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Hardeep Singh Puri, Command Representative of India to the United Nations. Dr. Mashaban, Deputy Command Representative of South Africa to the United Nations. Professor Ramachandra Guha of the London School of Economics, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. The dramatic event of the past year showed the immense power of non-violence. People in Tunisia, Egypt, and beyond proved that it is more effective to fire a tweet than to fire a gun. They did more than topple long-entrenched governments. They emboldened other oppressed peoples to think that the path of non-violence might work for them. This is not an easy path. There is a heavy risk for those who stare down the barrel of a gun armed only with the knowledge that they have right on their side. A heavy risk, even a deadly risk. But courageous individuals who embrace non-violence effectively corner their oppressors. Those oppressors will not like their choices. They can crack down harder, but that would reveal their moral bankruptcy. Or they can negotiate and trigger a process of change. Non-violence confounds those who face it, and that is why it works. Excellencies, more than 2 millennia ago, King Ashoka of the Kalinga Empire in India began a great tradition. After witnessing the horrors of war, he renounced the violence, embraced the Buddhism, and devoted his life to peace. Mahatma Gandhi carried on this great Indian practice when he used the power of non-violence to lead an historic movement for India's independence. For Gandhiji, means and ends were one. He lived by the conviction that only peaceful tactics could usher in a peaceful future, free from recrimination. As Mr. Mashaban knows well, Gandhi's outlook was shaped by his experience in South Africa. Gandhi's writings inspired people worldwide, including the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I vividly remember visiting Atlanta and seeing Dr. King's editions of Mahatma Gandhi's books. A young civil rights leader studied these works intensely, marked up their pages, and drew inspiration from their wisdom. I saw those precious artifacts displayed alongside Dr. King's letters to the United Nations' own Nobel Peace Prize-winning mediator, Ralph Bunche. The United Nations is proud of this connection to the non-violent struggle for progress. Our charter clearly champions a non-violent approach whenever possible. Article 33 explicitly calls on parties to, first of all, seek a solution by peaceful means. When necessary, the Security Council may use coercive measures. We saw this most recently in Cote d'Ivoire and Libya, where UN-authorized operations helped restore stability. The Council authorizes the use of force to protect civilians from violence, and then only as a last resort. Preventive diplomacy is one way the United Nations acts on its commitment to non-violence. We are engaging early on before tensions escalate into conflict. We are training mediators. We are strengthening our strategic partnership so we can respond more quickly to crisis. And we are supporting national institutions that promote dialogue and provide peaceful channels for the resolution of disputes. The UN Department of Political Affairs Mediation Support Unit, the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, the Bureau of Crisis Prevention and Recovery, and the UN regional centers in Central Asia and Africa are other important parts of the picture. As I emphasized in my recent report to the Security Council, preventive diplomacy is not an option, it is a necessity.